Peter Charles David, or Charles Peter David, is no stranger to us. Peter Charles David, born in Grenada and studied at GBSS, then migrated to Canada and studied at Carleton University. Upon his studies, he went back to Grenada during the Revolution and served during the Revolution. Returned to the US and studied law and became a practicing lawyer in Brooklyn. And many of you know that he has served some 7 years practicing law in New York. Upon his tiredness of being in New York, he then went back to Grenada in 2000 and continued to serve in frontline politics. Former foreign minister and former tourism minister, Peter Charles David, is one who loves people. He's one who gave all of his salaries, in fact, not only his salaries, but some of his friends' salaries to people because they are in need. And I am not just saying so because I know my salary does go to him to pay people. So Peter, who is someone who loves people, and it's no strange thing for us to see Peter David is here today because he is about to take another step in his career to serve the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. I want to welcome my good friend, Peter Charles David, to the podium.
Yes, good evening. Good evening, dear brothers and sisters. Prime Minister, the Honorable Keith Mitchell, Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Elvin Nimrod, Minister of Health, the Honorable Clarence Modeste, Ambassador to the United Nations, Mr. Antoine, and my dear friend, Ambassador Derek James. First of all, let me thank the organizers of this activity for doing a wonderful job. I think we have a wonderful group of people here this evening. I want you to give yourself a round of applause for being here. Brothers and sisters, I also want to recognize the role of the diaspora in the economic development of the country. My dear sister spoke of the contributions you've made in healthcare, otherwise. I think the contribution you've made, not only with respect to specific areas, but with respect to economic development, as you're well aware, remittances to our country, I think contributes, maybe the Minister of Finance will correct me, but upwards of 10% of GDP, and that is because of your commitment, your patriotism for Grenada. I also want to thank many of you for the support I've received from you over the many years of my own political involvement. I want to say thanks. I see many of my dear friends here this evening, persons who I've known since I was a child in GBSS, in Heinz School, and in many other areas. I want to thank you for being here and giving me support. And I want to say to you that while I have struggled in many respects and there have been difficulties, it's been an absolute joy, an absolute pleasure for me to serve the people of Grenada. I stand here this evening for the first time as a member of the new National Party. The last time I stood here, I was not a member of the new National Party. I was a minister of a government. But I want to say here this evening that I want to really thank the members of the new National Party, the grassroots members of the party, who have been nothing but extremely welcoming of me in this party. I want to thank you and tell you I hope that we have a wonderful journey together. I also want to thank the political leader, the Honorable Keith Mitchell, who has always said to me that I was in the wrong place. Well, I hope he believes now I'm in the right place. And to Honorable Nimrod, who's been a dear friend to me for many, many years. We practiced in New York together, we lived in Trinidad together, and we do many things together that I can't say on the record. Honorable Modesta, I want to thank you too for your warm welcome into the party and for your graciousness with me over the many years, even while we were combating on different sides. And to my many, many friends, who are not members of the NNP, who are maybe members of another party, I want to say thank you. Because while we may not be in the same party at the moment, we remain committed to the same thing, Project Grenada. And I know there are many of you here this evening. I'll get straight to the point. You're asking the question, why? Why is it that Peter David joined the NNP? Now let us place it in context. Let us put some context to what has happened. After more than 10 years as General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress, I and many others, I think there were formally about 10 of us, 10 leaders of the party were expelled, but many, many more were thrown out of the party. So when I became a member of the NNP, for those who didn't listen to the news, I was not a member of another party, I was without party. The fact is that I was expelled from a party without ever being given a reason. You know, I said to one dear comrade the other day, why was I expelled? And he said to me, well, there was some views of you. I said, well, I have practiced criminal law for the last upwards of 20 years. And every single person who was accused of anything, they were given a trial and a hearing. I, who was General Secretary, was not afforded such a privilege. As I said to my friends last week, we were going down the road as if we were in a bus. The driver just stopped the bus and just heaved me out. That is after we worked hard for many years. And we moved the party from 0 seats. Because when I came into that other party, it was as it was today, 0 seats. We moved it to 7, and then we moved it to 11. But you know, we nearly won the one in 2003. I know the Prime Minister and his team was shaking in their boots in 2003. But he escaped us in 2003, and we catch him in 2008. But after being so successful, the team that took the party from 0 to 11 was summarily kicked out without reason and without explanation. For more than a year and a half, I remained, and my dear colleagues, and I say we because every decision I take, I consult with my dear colleagues who we've struggled with for many years. For more than a year and a half, we remained outside of the party. But we observed the political process. We did not just extricate ourselves, we participated, but in a limited way. And we observed many things, but there was one thing that stood out over the years, or over a year and a half, is that our people, the people of Grenada, were fed up with the tribalism. That after many years of fighting each other, the people wanted a change in the approach of our politics. But the most important reason for the decision that we took about our membership of the NNP is the new approach of the NNP and its leader, Dr. Keith Mitchell, to the governance of our country. You know, brothers and sisters, the gentleman who introduced my dear sister Modeste spoke about the mark of a good and effective leader. And I agree with him, because I have always said that a good leader, an effective leader, is able to recognize the urgent needs of his country at a particular time. Dr. Mitchell, in my view, is such a leader. He he recognized that our people wanted a changed approach and that our country needed a changed approach. You know, the day after the elections, 2013, the Prime Minister, at his swearing in, that is before he became Prime Minister, as Prime Minister-elect, he said, and I quote, "It is our view that every Grenadian is a stakeholder in what we call Project Grenada." Prime Minister Mitchell said that the day he was sworn in as Prime Minister. This is the day, brothers and sisters, that he won 15 seats for the second time in our history and was being sworn in as Prime Minister for the fourth time. He's talking about Project Grenada. But this did not happen in isolation. And I'm saying this to place in context why I believe that the NMP is the best vehicle to take this country forward. This did not happen in isolation. I recall, and I say this to the Prime Minister, I recall somewhere, I think it was 2011 or 2012, in a budget debate, it was around the death of George Brizan, and the Prime Minister addressed the Parliament. At the time he was opposition leader, and he spoke extensively. He spoke about the need for reconciliation. He spoke about the need for forgiveness. He said that those he may have wronged persons, and he asked for their forgiveness, and he has forgiven himself those who may have wronged him. And that day I listened intently to the Prime Minister. I think I listened to every single word. And I spoke to him right after he spoke. We went outside of the Parliament, and I remember saying to the Prime Minister, "Are you serious about what you just said?" Because that got my attention. I said, "Are you serious about what you're saying about the development of our country and the need for unity?" And he said, "Peter," because at the time George Brizan had just died, he hadn't even buried yet. He said, "We are all going to go that way. We need to fix Grenada before we go." It is my view, brothers and sisters, that Dr. Mitchell, like all of us, he has evolved, because we all evolve based on our experiences. And it is my view that he had evolved to a certain position based on his own experience in the politics. Remember, at the time, he was defeated in 2008. And I expect that, like all of us, when we face positions like that, we reflect. And it was my view that upon his own reflection, he will speak for himself on the issue, that he had evolved to a new place. Then came the national elections. Because all during the campaign, Dr. Mitchell spoke about the need for reconciliation and unity and all of that. But you know, politicians can say one thing, but then when they reach there, they say another thing. So when you're listening to a politician, you kind of have to be careful. So of course, Prime Minister Mitchell spoke a lot about unity and forgiveness, but you know, the election came around, and I said to myself, let's see if this Prime Minister is serious. The evening of the election victory, I went to Tantine and stood there particularly to listen to what the Prime Minister had to say, because he could have gone two ways. He could have said, "Listen, I win 15, I big and bad, I don't need nobody." Or he could be humble, he could be magnanimous, and he could ask for that message that he spoke of to be continued into governance. Prime Minister Mitchell said at that time that he asked God, Almighty God, what it is he did to deserve a second chance. And that was significant. Because here was a man who was saying that he's receiving a second chance And that second chance came through the intervention of Almighty God. And he went on to say something further. He said, we must work together, all of us, and we must work with people like Chester Humphrey and Madonna Harford. Well, you know the history of Chester Humphrey and Keith Mitchell. But here's a prime minister who just won 15 seats, has become prime minister for the fourth time, and he's reaching out to people who are his combatants in the period up to that. But not only did he reach out on that night, since that day, it is our view that the Prime Minister has had an inclusive approach to governance. And that approach is not only an approach that he's taken publicly, because I attended as a guest several months ago, I think it was earlier this year, the convention of the NNP. And in a closed session, there were some ambassadors present, but the delegates of the NNP, Prime Minister Mitchell, as political leader, admonished his own party to approach the governance of our country in an inclusive way. He said to them that many of you are saying this is NNP time, but it's not NNP time, it's Grenada time, and that was the message that Prime Minister Mitchell gave to his own people. So he wasn't coming outside to us with one message and going to his people with another message. The message that he carried of unity, of reconciliation, of forgiveness, of Project Grenada is a message that he has been consistently advocating both inside and outside of the NNP. Brothers and sisters, through all the battles that we fought with the NNP, I must say that it has maintained what we call its working class credentials. It is our view that the party, in many of its programs, has continued to be a serious ray of hope for the poor and the disenfranchised. And since taking office, not only has the Prime Minister spoken these words, but he has acted in that way. Prime Minister Mitchell, with respect to the trade union movement, has met with the unions more times in 1 year than the previous government met in all of its 4.5 years in government. The NNP government is the one that has paid salary increases to workers at a time when other governments in the region are finding it difficult to do that. In addition to that, this government has paid 3 or 4 tranches in back pay for workers. Brothers and sisters, additionally, the Prime Minister and his government has removed income tax on severance pay, placing thousands of dollars in the hands of unfortunate workers who have lost their jobs in cable and wireless, in RBTT, First Caribbean, and several other places. The NNP has moved speedily to implement a national insurance scheme, something that will benefit the poor people of our country. So, brothers and sisters, it is clear, abundantly clear, as we say in courts, it is pellucidly clear that this government has kept working people at its focus in spite of all of the challenges facing us at this time. Brothers and sisters, in addition, this government has had a very progressive approach to foreign policy, establishing relations with new countries while maintaining relations with our old traditional allies. This government has done things with governments internationally that the previous government was afraid to do. This government has been bold, it has been progressive. Brothers and sisters, I have therefore come to the view that this call made by the Prime Minister to work together must be answered. And it must be answered by all of us who are interested in building Grenada. Yeah. Of course, brothers and sisters, I know that there will be people who will oppose it. Of course, there will be those who, for their own narrow political objectives, would oppose a call for national unity. Brothers and sisters, that is part of our political discourse. But, as I say to them, those who want to continue to fight, take a corner. Have your fight. Those of us who want to build Grenada, let us build Grenada together for our children and grandchildren. We believe, brothers and sisters, that in this era of difficulty, our nation calls on us, as I said last week, to beat our swords into plowshares and our spears into pruning hooks. We are faced with new challenges. We need new approaches. This clarion call for unity must not go unanswered. The economic challenges facing this country, facing our country, are too huge. The times are too critical for us to retreat in what we are used to, which is a tribal war between each other. Brothers and sisters, of course, there are those who enjoy the tribal war. To them, in their own comfort, they take pleasure in attacking. They take pleasure in demonizing. They do not care about our country. Those of us who care must work together, because I tell you, all of us, brothers and sisters, want the same things. You need jobs for your children. You need health care for your parents. You need housing for your family. And it matters not whether or not you're NNP, NDC, ELM, NUF. Those are the things we need, and those are the things we should fight for. Brothers and sisters, to even begin to address these issues calls for unprecedented levels of unity, such that we've never seen in our country. Brothers and sisters, there are many of us who will easily remember the battles of the past. But as I said earlier this last week, and I quote, "What a lifetime in politics has taught me is that it is easier to demonize your opponents than to build positive structures in a country." But this very life in politics has also taught me that there's no need to take the easy road to political division and national destruction. We need to take the tougher road with conviction, discipline, and resolve, understanding that we must come together to fight a common cause. Brothers and sisters, one does not have to be a member of the NNP to be part of the Project Grenada. Project Grenada is about building Grenada. I chose that path, and many others will choose the path of joining a political party. But wherever you are, in your community, in your churches, in your diaspora groups, the call has gone out to unite, to build Grenada, and we must answer that call. I just want to end by quoting a dear friend of mine, Dr. Terry Marshall. Writing an article last week in The Informer, he said this. Bear with me, I'll conclude. So all the bitter and vitriolic comments that one hears, and this is Dr. Marshall writing, so all the bitter and vitriolic comments that one hears about Dr. Mitchell does not change the fact that he has been the most successful and popular leader since 1983, whether we like it or not. And he's speaking about my entry into the NNP. He says, so if one chooses to join his party, there is absolutely no shame in doing so, because the people want his party, the NNP, and him, Dr. Mitchell, to continue to provide the leadership that seems lacking from other mainstream parties. Mr. Marichaud goes on to say, Dr. Marichaud, Peter is speaking a lot about Project Grenada, which seeks to put Grenada first and an end to the political divide and the tribalism that has affected this country for years. I personally have no problem with this construct because we as a people have suffered too much in the past because of politics. The political bitterness, spite, and hatred that still exists would be very difficult to eradicate because it is very much ingrained in us as part of our cultural heritage. However, Dr. Marichaud concludes, if we can succeed in getting rid of the divisions, and after an election, everyone rallies around the winning party and pitching to help, not for the sake of the party, but for the sake of the country, then there is nothing that can stop us from resolving the magnitude of problems that we face to develop this beautiful country of ours. It may sound idealistic to get people to change their attitudes and line up behind Project Grenada or any other project that seeks to unify the Grenadian people around the common goal of development. But he concludes, now more than ever, we need more unity and patriotism because the challenges facing us as a people will be insurmountable if we continue on this present path. No one political party has all the answers, but collectively, as a people, we have already demonstrated that innate capacity and resilience to resolve our problems, and we can do it again if we try. Brothers and sisters, I urge you this evening to answer the call of Dr. Mitchell, to answer the call of the NNP, to answer the call of the people of Grenada, to come together, to work together, to build Grenada. We are facing difficult times. But if we face difficult times, we can resolve these difficulties if we work together. Because united we stand, divided we fall.